Rev up your engines!
Car companies need to stop reinventing things that already work. It's just gone haywire. If you know a little bit of history, the Jaguar XF sedan had a rotary shifter that popped up. You know, looks cool, right? And all I said was, where do they break? And of course, they broke rather quickly. Did it add to real world improvement? No, of course it didn't. Well, what's the difference if you get a shift and you go clunk clunk or you go click click? Let's face it, it wasn't any improvement. I remember back in the day, Chrysler had some of these vehicles that had push button shifter instead of you shifting the gear. Buttons on the front. Park, neutral, drive, low, you know? And they broke all the time. It wasn't an improvement? No, it wasn't an improvement. It was merely cosmetic. Let's face it. Get a regular shifter, right? That's either on a column or on the floor. What do you got? Park, reverse, neutral, drive, low. Do you need to make it computerized? Do you need to make it complex? No, you really don't. I remember last year I was testing out some new cars, and I was in these Lexuses. Great, beautiful, super expensive cars. Their audio system was absolute crap. The interface was just garbage. You had to keep pushing different buttons. It wasn't at all something you could just jump in and hook up and drive. It was annoying, and many people said the same thing. They said, hey, great car, but man, that infotainment system, what a pile of garbage. And it was just poorly designed. And these guys are like, they're getting carried away with themselves. How much crap can we put on a car? What are they going to have next? It's going to toast your bread and butter it and then hand it to you while you're driving the car? You know, this stuff isn't necessary. I'll never forget about 6, 7 years ago, I had a hybrid Ford for a week. I drove it from Houston to Corpus Christi. And I'm not making this up, about 45 minutes to figure out how to operate the CD player. It was just so complex that we gave up. We listened to the radio. Eventually I figured it out, but it's just ridiculous. And in the case of some of these changes, it can even be deadly. I look at the cars, now they want these big screens, right? So the big screen is in the middle, to the right. So to look at that screen, you gotta go like that. You're supposed to be looking down the highway, right? Why do you think the speedometer and the temperature gauge were always in front of you, just a little down? You can just glance down with your eyes, see everything you need to see. You didn't need to turn your head, look at this giant screen. No, you didn't need to do that kind of stuff. And the hilarious thing is, if you watch my really old video I had on Mercedes-Benz, I was making a left, and that video is, I don't know, 10, 15 years old, an entire universe of buttons you could push, right? And I asked one of my customers, you know what these buttons, they didn't even know what half the buttons even did. And of course, when you're talking about a touch screen, your brain is thinking with that touch screen, you got to get to the right one, you got to move it right. Why do you think buttons were invented in the first place? The headlight button's over there, you know? The knob over here controls your wipers. Great, you know where it is. And most cars used to be standardized. You know, they'd have the turn signal on the left, and they'd have the headlight assembly, turn it on the right, or on the dash, in one place where you could turn it on. You start putting all these computer interface things on, man, you're asking for trouble. It's only common sense. You start putting all this technology into a car, things that aren't needed. The worst one to me is making virtual reality mirrors where they'll project on your driver's side glass. So instead of having a rear view mirror on the outside, the side view mirror, it's going to be a projection on your window. Oh yeah, and then wait till that breaks and you don't see what's coming on. Glass mirrors are pretty good technology, you know. I don't think we should go away from that stuff just yet and keep adding more things just because engineers, and look at the mess it gotten the Germans into. I mean, their cars are so complex, nobody can fix them when they get older because they got so much complexity and things that you really don't need to make that complex. Of course, the Germans do it because they can. They always did. Let's see how big we can make our tanks, for example, in World War II. What were they? Big, heavy tanks. Couldn't go over the bridges. And they were easy targets at the end because they were so big. They were working their way. Let's make this tank technology as best as we can and just keep going up. And all it takes is one plane to fly over a bomb, boom, that's the end of the tank. They didn't look at the overall picture. They just got two tunnel vision of let's make this higher tech, higher tech. Higher tech isn't always the answer. John Moore says, Scotty, I have an 01 Saab 9.5 Aero. Why do I gain mileage when I use the AC? Is it because of the turbocharger? No. It's almost theoretically impossible for you to gain gas mileage by turning the AC. You get the same gas mileage with the AC on the highway. If you turn the AC on and close the windows from the wind drag of rolling the windows down, so that you would lose a little bit of gas mileage with the AC on, but you'd lose that same amount of gas mileage with the windows rolled down. But driving around normally, you're going like 30, 40 in the city or something, the drag isn't much with the window rolled down. It's pretty much impossible for you to get better gas mileage when you turn the AC on, unless your car has some type of problem and it's getting crap gas mileage when you're not having the AC. And then when you turn the AC on, that does affect the electrical system of the car, and perhaps then the alternator puts out a little more electricity because it sees the AC compressor is using a lot of power, so maybe it's pumping more power into the system, and the problem that you have is negated when more electricity is sent to, say, maybe the fuel injectors or the ignition system. But that's the only way I could even think of theoretically being possible, because air conditioning is a drag. You have air conditioning, the compressor's using energy, and you're going to get somewhat worse gas mileage. Art Ackerman says, why don't you like Alfa Romeo? Because I don't like beautiful things that don't work. I used to work on them back in the day. They pulled out of the United States decades ago. Of course, they came in when Fiat bought Chrysler, because that's just, money-making thing there. They want to try to sell them. They didn't sell hardly any of them in the United States anyways, because they fall apart. Fiat's name in mechanics terms was fix it again, Tony. Alfa Romeo, people will say, all right already. Because you're sick of it breaking, there it goes breaking again, They're beautiful cars, they're fast when they run, but they fall apart. The company's been bleeding money for decades. It's just not a logical thing to buy for transportation. Great, they belong in a museum where you can look at them, but not on the road where you have to drive them. Voice of Salt says, Scotty, my dad has an '05 Dodge Ram. The issue is when he turns it off, when the key is removed, it takes a few seconds to turn off. What do you think the issue is? Here's something a lot of people don't understand. They think you turn your key, the power goes from the battery to the ignition to start the car. No. Modern vehicles, that key isn't even 12 volts. It's a 5-volt reference signal. Goes to the computer. The computer has to decide what it's going to do. Your computer's got a little bit of lag time, and you turn it off, takes a second. Some do the opposite. Some of them, you turn the key on, and the car doesn't start right away, and then a few seconds later it starts. It's because there's a lag time. Computers are extremely expensive. Pray that it's the ignition switch not working correctly, because when you turn it off, if the contact isn't good, it might take a little while for it to stop having electricity flowing through it. So if you want to take a wild guess, change the ignition switch, and if it fixes it, send me a case of beer for the free advice. But realize, you turn that key off, it doesn't just shut power off to the engine. It tells the computer, and the computer decides to turn it off. Everything's run by computers these days. Gregory Simmons says, why is Kentucky auto insurance so much? They want $600 a month on a 98 Buick Century just for liability. That is highway robbery. A 98 Buick should have cheap insurance, $600 a month. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your record is. If you have a bad driving record, insurance companies have gotten worse and worse over time. They just keep jacking the rates up. Let's say you got a DUI in the past. Let's say you're 18 years old. Right there, if you're an 18-year-old male, bad enough if you're a female, but the males, they jack the price up more. It's all done by insurance mathematicians. Realize all they do is look at raw data. And if they find out that 18-year-old boys wreck this much more, they're going to charge you that much more for insurance. And they're allowed to by law, because it's all done mathematically. And every once in a while, I know back in Texas, people would complain. They go to the state legislature in Texas, but the insurance companies would just come with their data and all their mathematicians, and they'd say, look, people this age, here's the damage they did. They have to pay more because they do more damage. At $600 a month, I don't even pay that a year for my vehicles for just liability. If I were you, I'd price around. Or maybe move to Tennessee. It's a lot cheaper here than it is in Kentucky if they're charging that much. Graham Wells says, don't you Yanks complain. In the UK, gas, which we call petrol, is over $9 a gallon. So you guys are a lot better than us. Yeah, it's over 3 times what we're paying here. I took a trip to London years ago, and I was just shocked at the price of gasoline. No wonder you're driving tiny little cars, good gas mileage. $9 a gallon. Of course, you realize, if you look at the economics of it, oil pretty much is the same all over the world. You're paying taxes, because as your own countryman John Lennon sang in the song Taxman, if you try to walk, they'll tax your feet. I guess in England, they do tax just about everything at an extremely high level. Your gas doesn't cost any more than it does here. It's just that you're paying all these taxes to the government. I'm not going to move there. I visited there, it was nice, but there's no way I'm going to move there. Jack Jackington says, what do you think of the new Charger and Challenger Hellcat? Extremely fast vehicle, 700-something horsepower if you get a supercharged one, but I just read some problems they have. You better be careful. If you've got those stupid cast spoke wheels, they are shattering for people. They can't take the horsepower, just like the new Corvettes with the mid-engines do. Vehicle that powerful goes that fast. Forged wheels are forged. They're pressure built. They are stronger. The cast ones, they're inherently, all castings have weakness here or there. And then they break off. I saw a picture the other day of one. The guy's entire wheel flew off, and the only thing left on the car was the middle of the hub bolted on with 5 pieces of spokes sticking out and the rest is sheared, and you could see the pot metal where it ripped apart. They just aren't made that well. So if I were you, if I were going to buy one of those, get yourself a set of forged wheels first thing before you get killed if a wheel flies off, because Chrysler makes the wheels too cheap. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.